Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, people of the world. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by Marcus Canady. Now, sometimes I meet people for the first time via just connections. So shout out to Christine Landau. And this gentleman is an author of a book, Intrusive Leadership. And Christine thought that he would be a great guest of this podcast because of the things that he's doing in regards to leadership training, this term that he's coined, intrusive leadership, and just something that can really start the new year, really having people think about leadership in a new facet. So before we get started, Brother Marcus, separate brother, he's different. He ain't the black and old gold. He's the purple and gold. I'm not going to hold that against him. But Brother Marcus, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. Once again, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here to talk about a positive leadership style, a leadership style that I would like to say is the most critical leadership style for the future. And we can get into that a little bit more later. But military veteran, over 2 decades, active duty military in the Coast Guard specifically. And this has just become a passion through personal experience, understanding how I have been impacted by intrusive leadership. When I think about leaders or supervisors, managers that I have worked for 15, 20 years ago that I still remember, that I still reach out to, that I still talk to, people that have had a profound impact in my life, career and personal, they all had a common quality. They were all intrusive leaders. Now, while I was experiencing it, while I was working with them 10, 15 years ago, I didn't know what it was. But after researching it, I didn't coin the term. I wish I did. If I did, it cost you a lot more to have me today. But what's interesting is through my research, I realized that even though the term has been around for decades and people have used it, it hasn't really been defined. Okay. And so I actually has given it a definition, but because it wasn't defined, when you ask people about intrusive leadership, you might get a negative opinion on what it is because of the word intrusive, right? But I am looking to change that. I'm looking to make intrusive leadership a leadership style that is commonplace, just like servant leadership, charismatic leadership. I'm looking to change the dynamics of it so that people understand that when they hear it, they know exactly what it is and the impacts that it can have on people.
Yeah, the thing I think about, there's like over 1,000 leadership styles, as you said, and I think leadership as a study is not growing, but it's been around since the dawn of. We've had leaders, soldiers, leaders, art of war, all those things, right? And we have different ways to define leadership. So, as you were doing this, and you were in your service, what spoke to you about studying this particular facet of leadership? With all the thousands of studies or types of leadership, why did this discipline speak to you?
So there's really a personal story that began my journey. Let's go back to 2020. I found myself sitting in my car, in my truck actually, and needing a moment to decompress, thinking about what I was watching playing out on TV, what I was watching playing out on the streets of America. It was the day after I watched the murder of George Floyd for the first time. And looking back on it, I think that I could say I was not mentally okay. And what was happening was I was showing up at the job, bottling up my emotions. And even though I was working around people that I knew cared about me, because in that moment I was going through something, even though it wasn't something that directly correlated to the job, it just correlated to life. It had me question for a moment if the people that I was working with every single day really valued and supported me as a whole person.
You know, it's funny. It's because I think for many black men, what was going on during COVID, particularly Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, all that stuff, was the impetus to start something. And I don't want to jump on and take your platform, but that was like I started a black male faculty and staff group from a place of deficit, similar. Like I was not well, and so I was like I just needed to be around people. So I just started a Zoom call and said any black man that worked at Mason, can we just jump on the Zoom call? Yeah. So it's very interesting to see those parallels of like in a space of needing connection that sparked your journey. So can you continue? Yeah. Like how did that spark your journey?
But let's go with that because I think that has a direct correlation. You saw a need because of a void and you aim to fill it by just creating a Zoom call. But the point of it was to get people to simply talk through their emotions. Now,
I'm also going to say very selfishly, you're talking about the void. I was doing it very, like, you're talking about like leadership, but very egocentrically. I needed a space for myself. So I was like, if no one else is going to do it, I'm just going to do it. But I don't care if 2 people joined the call, 5, 6. I didn't care. I needed people.
It was therapeutic for you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now just imagine how many people during that time was showing up to the job, feeling the same way, spending 8, 10 hours, and not actually getting that sort of support.
Right.
So what an intrusive leader would do in that moment would say, hey, the conversations that I might be having at my kitchen table could be a lot different than what Philip is having right now because of what's going on. Let me ask how he's doing. Mm-hmm. I might schedule a meeting with you. Don't tell me, I'm not calling you into this meeting for you to give me an update on the project, for you to tell me the metrics, for you to tell me the sales report, right? Yeah. I'm scheduling this meeting because I see what's going on and I just want to check to see how you're doing.
That's really the word intrusive means that you are calling in and it's coming from a place of empathy and thinking about like, yeah, you called people and like, and you're right, intruding, but I am intruding on your personal life. How does that feel? Because it translates to inevitably your work experience.
Yeah. So when you think about it, what I just played out, right? If someone didn't know you, you would say that's intruding.
There you go.
But if it came from someone that you trusted, if it came from a friend, if it came from a fraternity brother, mm-hmm. if it came from a cousin, if they can ask you the same thing, you're not going to take it as intruding. You're going to take it as love because there's an element of trust there.
The action is the same. It's the messenger or the perpetrator of that action.
Right. When
so
someone
so that person is still intruding, but because you trust them, it doesn't feel intrusive.
It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
Right? That person is standing on a foundation of trust. And that is a integral part of intrusive leadership. Intrusive leadership is a leadership style that uses intentional actions to inspire, support, develop, and care for people by building trusting relationships that addresses personal as well as professional interests and concerns. And when I say caring for the person, it's the whole person. So I might be at the job dealing with an engineer. I might be dealing with a nurse. I might be dealing with a financial analyst. But I'm also dealing with a mother. Mm-hmm. I'm also dealing with a husband. And so
we're also dealing with a black man, black woman, Asian. Like you're dealing with those other identities that intersect.
Right. And so I am going to open myself up And the reason why I say I open myself up is because this is something that has to be accepted. The employee has to allow me to intrude. They have to allow me to be able to lead more of them than just the employee. I get there by being intentional, building relationships with them, talking to them, earning their trust, so that when they're going through something, I can be intrusive, but it not be taken in a negative sense, right? Now, yes, I'm an African American. George Floyd, there was a time for intrusive leadership, right? Pandemic, Asian hate.
Yeah.
There was a time for intrusive leadership, right?
Burnt out parents at home. There's a time. Yeah.
Intrusive leadership, right?
Yeah, he was like, why is this person not camera on? Well, it's because they got their kids screaming at home.
Right. Yeah. Divorces, right? Special needs, all of these different things.
Yes.
Israel, Hamas.
Yes.
How many of us went at the job, at the school? How many of us looked at our Jewish counterparts and said, how are you guys doing? Yeah. How many of us looked at our Muslim counterparts and say, how are we doing? Yeah. Right? Now,
they're bringing all that to work.
All of it. And so I think that culturally, we went through a time where what happens at home stays at home. This newer generation, they don't want that.
I was about to say, because I think one of the stereotypes, thinking about old school, my dad, is that it's kind of built from like compartmentalizing. Like back in the day, let's say older generation, my work self is my work. I leave work at work. My home is my home. This is this. But as we know, particularly with this, that even back then, that was a mindset, but that still was not happening, right? Like people weren't technically leaving home at home. Even back then when my dad was doing it, it's just that was the normal culture of work. Work historically was I go to a job, I check in, punch out. Huh. But I don't know, in medicine, like did it work? Like why did a whole generation, was that just it worked, or was it something that should have been addressed way longer? You know what I'm saying? Like it was, that's the way it is. Does that mean that the way it was appropriate, or, like
for me, I think that was never really the best way that people should have been treating people. However, it worked. You can run your operation like that, right? But there's something I always say. There's a difference between management and leadership.
Yeah.
Management tells you to leave your personal issues at home. Management only deals with you as an employee.
Yes.
Right? Leaders try to connect with you on a personal level, and they want you to bring their whole self. Now, older generations, that's the way that it was. They're used to that. This younger generation, and this is why I say this is one of the most critical, this is the most critical leadership style for the future. If you plan on retaining the quality talent that is in this younger generation, you are going to have to lead differently, because this younger generation does not want to be bottled up at the job. They want to make sure that they are actually cared for, right? They don't want to have to code switch. They care about things that's going on in the community, right? They actually want to bring their whole self to the job. If you do not have leaders that can lead in that way, that are able to craft their leadership style to the individual, or they can lead the person that is having their first job out of college, as well as leading the person that is 5 years from retirement, and making sure everyone is feeling valued and heard. See, a manager can allow you to speak, but a leader makes sure that you feel heard. There's two different things, right? The only way you're going to do that and retain that talent at your organization and get them to think about the company as a company that is like a family versus it being transactional, you got to have intrusive leaders.
So one of my thoughts, though, is then what? So I'm just going to make an assumption. So the younger generation, when you were developing this book and writing it, you probably got more like, right on, I'm diving. Were you getting more challenges from older generation leaders and then more buy-in from young leaders? Talk about that experience as you developed, because you wrote a book. Talk about the development of the book and who was on board and early on buy-in. They bought in earlier.
Yeah. So what I end up noticing early on is that, one, the younger generation wanted this. I got a sense of that early on. Two, people that have actually needed it and got it were 100% on board. I would start talking about it, and they would instantly name the supervisor that did this for them. And it could be 5-10 years ago, which is why the name of the book is How to Become That Leader. How do you become that leader that people remember 5-10 years from now, right? Then people would say people that needed it and didn't get it. They were also like, I left this job because I needed this and didn't get it. I left the service because I wasn't getting this, right? The pushback that I got did come from the older generation. Oddly enough, they would blame the younger generation. They don't want to deal with this. They don't want you all in their lives. The ones that's always telling you where they're going on vacation on Instagram, they don't want you in their lives. It's really folks in the older generation that just didn't want to change how they did business. They didn't want to have to put forth the extra effort of getting to know people, talking to someone that's different than them, that might have grew up different than them, really being intentional, right? Once again, managers stay in comfortable places. Leaders are willing to get out of their comfort zone in order to connect with someone. It is an easier thing to manage. And so when you're just really trying to, hey, I'm just trying to get to the bottom line, I'm trying to finish out, I'm trying to get to retirement, I'm not trying to sit up here and put forth this extra effort, you're not going to want to do this. But if you want to truly inspire people, if you want to get the most out of them, if you want them to be truly vested in organizational success, if you want to be the person that someone that works for you is going through a tough time and is thinking about whether this world is better with them not here, you want them to feel comfortable enough to call you. If you want to be that leader, you have to be an intrusive leader.
It seems like, and what I'm hearing is like, it does take more effort to be a leader, but then it's almost like front-loaded, though. If you're doing this and putting the extra work in now, it yields like less problems later. So, for instance, then people will come to you when they have problems before you become problems. So it is like a front-loaded thing. Like, it's going to take a lot of work to be a leader, but I will tell you, if you do this, it saves you time or it makes people more productive. So what was some of your kickback? As you know, I'm giving you some examples. What was some of your like, okay, it is hard. You're right. Or that, but if you do this hard stuff now, hard is going to be hard. What kind of hard? Choose your hard. How'd you coin that to them?
And you hit it right on the head. You think that you're going to save time by not doing this. You're actually going to end up spending the time regardless. You're going to end up doing investigations with employee issues. You're going to have to spend more time recruiting because your retention rates are low. Now you got to spend more time retraining, right? Or if something truly bad happens, you're going to spend some time now picking up the pieces because someone is not here because they took their own life. You are going to spend the time one way or another. To your point, What I'm trying to tell leaders is that spend the time on the front end, and you might lessen the time on the back end. I will definitely say, when it comes to retention, any business knows how much money they spend retraining folks, recruiting and retraining. That impacts the bottom line. Anytime someone decides to go take another job at another corporation and leaves yours, not only you are spending money trying to fill that seat again and retraining them, loss of productivity, but that knowledge goes with them. And so you might not want to spend the time to get to know that person and making sure they feel valued while they're sitting at your place of work. But it's going to impact your bottom line when your retention numbers are down. With intrusive leadership, your retention numbers go up. And now that money that you're spending trying to hire folks or retrain folks, you can allocate those to other things. So the people that are afraid of spending that time on the front end, that would be my message to them. But it still comes down to a choice. You have to decide if you want to do this or not. You have to decide if you want to build these connections or not. There are simply going to be some people that choose not to. That's just the nature of the beast. If you are that manager, if you are that supervisor, you have to say to yourself, when I'm looking for that next person to promote, am I only promoting the person with the technical skills and then expecting them to also be a leader? Or am I also looking at people with leadership skills as in addition to the technical skills? Because I need people to be leading in this manner.
So one of the thoughts I have too to this is you're a military gentleman. Was the industry, the military, harder to sell? And it's like, counselors and people with more feelings, let's say you introduce this to a bunch of educators. They're all on board. And then the military, like, no. Mm-hmm. Did you find any variance in industries in regards to reception to this leadership style?
Oddly enough, I have not. I cut my teeth in the military. So I dealt and introduced this to the military first. And they immediately hopped on it. But part of it is because of the nature of the job. When you are literally doing life-saving missions, you're putting yourself at risk. Not only are you spending maybe 8 hours, but you might be deployed and you're spending 8 months together, right? My life depends on you having your head in the game, right? I need to make sure that you care about me enough that you're going to have my back, right? When you're working in that sort of environment, people know how important it is to have personal relationships with the people that you're working with. Also, and I think the military, and I think, the military is a subset of society. So the military is dealing with an issue of suicide. But our society is dealing with an issue with suicide as well, right? But it was quick. Like, it was a quick recognition how this leadership style is not necessarily the answer. It's something that I never say that this leadership style is going to solve the suicide issue, but it will give someone a fighting chance to be the difference. I have seen it personally, and I have heard story after story after story where people have said, I'm here today because someone was intrusive with me.
Checked in on you. So to that point, someone checked on you. That's very powerful. Do you think, standing right here as black men, do you think that this leadership style is stereotypically harder to buy in? And I mean by this is black men heal, black men compartmentalize, black men hold things in. We see a lot of, particularly, as we said, the George Floyd, a lot of movements toward black men mental health and, see something, say something, reach out. Did you find any variance in this adoption for black men?
I really didn't find any variance that was noticeable. because this is a leadership style about people, how people should be treating people, right? What's interesting though is the message that I put forward, especially right now, when it comes to DE&I. What has been interesting is after a lot of my presentations, I have had a number of white males come up to me to say, I came for a leadership discussion and I walked away with a DE&I lesson that I liked for the first time. Now, what am I saying? That could be different because obviously I'm not hearing every D&I message. But in what I say when it comes to that, especially in this moment, is that I do not separate leadership from diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a leadership characteristic. As a leader, if you are intentional about building relationships with everyone and connecting with everyone, making sure everyone feels valued and supported, then you have to value DE&I. Now, that is, you value it for the African American, you value it for the woman, you also value it for white males. As an African American supervisor, if I'm walking around and I'm only trying to do this for women and minorities, then the white males that I'm leading, they're not getting everything, they're not getting all of me. So I have to do this for them too, because they could be dealing with divorce. They could be dealing with ailing parents. White males have committed suicide too. So I have to be intentional about building relationships with everyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing, I mean, like you said, right, like diversity, equity, and inclusion is not anti-white or anti-patriarchal. It's understanding that systems exist, but also understanding, too, is like, you just said it, right, that white male, that's not their only identity. It could be that white male, but it's a first-gen student or first-gen person. Right. That white male that is neurodivergent, that might have ADHD or autism. So, like, we can't just blankly say that, too. So this leadership style, being an intrusive leader, is looking at just all people and saying all the different identities, not just the most salient, visible one. There's so many hidden identities that you won't get to know. Like, you won't know about a dude having a divorce, that, you know, they're a white male, but they're also a father. I'm a father. We bond off being fathers, right? Right. So I guess you have to be intrusive to understand that. Exactly. And have that lens ready to. So is there, like, techniques? How do you just ask a bunch of questions and get to know people? Like, how do you peel back those onions safely? Yeah, so that's it. You know, you ask questions, how you doing? You pick up on certain things you remember. The best way that for you, because everyone's different. Some people can meet somebody for the first time and 10 weeks, they remember that conversation, they know the name and everything about them. So but as a leader, you're intentional. But kind of going back to that DE&I conversation, we really have to take a look at what's happening right now and say, hey, why is there pushback? So I mentioned retention. If I'm a leader and the only time that I talk about retention is how we're doing retaining minorities and women, if that's the only time my people hear me talk about retention or the value of it, then the white males that are working for me, it's no shock that they might say to themselves, hey, is retaining me important? Yeah. And so as a leader, I have to be connected with everyone so they know that, hey, what are your career goals? Because I'm going to do everything I can so you can reach my career goals, right? Now, a lot of corporations and businesses, what I think is we've been doing a lot of diversity things
thinking that we've been doing inclusion things. Now, what do I mean by that? You're an African American working for me. So I'm going to send you to this conference so that you can be around other African Americans, so that you can get some support, mentoring, right? But I'm not doing anything for you in the office. Sally is a woman. So, hey, there's a women's group for you to go and be around other women. And, oh, there's another conference over here for you to be around other women so you can get supported. But I'm not doing anything for you at the job where you work all the time. I think a lot of people working in corporations and businesses, that their inclusion efforts are really sending them away so that they could be with people that are like them and think like them, but not doing anything for them that they feel included when they walk through that office door, right? It's the personal relationships with the people that you're working with. Now, all of those things have value. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm a part of some of those groups, and I will continue to be a part of those groups. But not only am I going to support you as an African American or as an Asian American or a woman and have you go to these groups, but I'm going to support you as a woman, Asian American, African American at the job. You're going to feel included every day that you show up because I am going to build a relationship with you. That is, I think, the gap, right? If everyone was working for someone that they really felt like was very intentional about building a trusting relationship with them, and they felt valued and supported in their authentic self every day at the job, that is actually the inclusive environment that we're trying to get to. You can't do that unless you build personal relationships. And with that, we can have conversations. Now we can talk through some things, right? Now we come tighter as a workplace, as a unit, as a team, right? Now when it's time to sacrifice and we got to spend a couple of extra hours, we might have to come in on the weekend. You're more willing to do it because you know the people that are around you have your back if you ever needed it.
So one of my thoughts too, and I love that you're talking about different identities, is I think one of my thoughts too is before you go out, there needs to be some introspection, because like I might need to know how I am triggered by, let's say, we're going to work together, me and conservative white male Joe. And I need to look at his lens, but also I need to look at when he says things, how it triggers me. So can we talk about, in this leadership style, intrusive leadership style, how you somewhat need to be intrusive with yourself?
100%. 100%. One of them, I've been reading a lot of books, oddly enough, since writing the first book. I read the book Robert E. Lee and Me. I think that book had more of an impact on me than a lot of other books. Why? Is because before I read that book, I had a stereotypical image and thought about people that had an affinity to the Confederate flag or these Confederate monuments. I never took the time to think about it from their perspective. So in reading that book, it didn't change my opinion on the flag or the monuments, but I understood why certain folks are so attached to and why they have such an emotional reaction to some of the things that's going on. So in a sense, I was a little bit more empathetic, and now we can have conversations. So some of the things that you have to do, a little bit of cultural awareness. Once again, you don't separate diversity, equity, and inclusion from leadership. If I want to be the best leader for everyone, then I have to figure out how to connect with everyone. So if conservative white male, well, I got to figure out a way to connect with that person. I got to earn his trust too, just like I got to earn your trust, right? Because I want him to also think that he has every opportunity for success as someone else. I'm African American. If I got a conservative white male, I could think that he might think that he's at a disadvantage because now he's working for me. And he might think that I don't care about him. I have to actually be intentional in building a relationship so that he knows that I care about him. He knows that I care about his family. He knows that I will mentor him as well. I was talking about retention. Let's talk about mentorship. I think that the majority of conversations about the importance of mentorship, from my experience, and once again, over 2 decades in the military, so there might not be the same thing in corporate America, but the majority of the conversations about mentorship was really the importance of it for minorities and women. We needed to go and get mentors so that we can be successful in the organization. The assumption was white males were automatically getting it. We were also told that we needed to make sure that all of our mentors did not look like us. So the message was, go and find some white male mentors as well. Now, great advice. Not saying it's wrong advice, but white males need mentors too. Not all of them that I'm finding out and having these conversations have had mentors because they haven't been told that. So the idea that all white males are automatically getting mentorship, I don't think it's true now. They need to be mentored. Now, just like it's important for me to have mentors that don't look like me, imagine if every white male had been groomed by a mentor that did not look like them as well. Think about how much better we would be with some of these cultural issues in the job. So even when it comes down to mentorship, once again, it has to be intentional for everyone.
I was about to say, I love that. I was about to dive in because I wrote a paper. It's like you said, this symbiotic relationship of mentor to mentee, right? The benefits for a mentor and a mentee. And there's so many benefits. So I do agree that we almost need all of it. Like as a black male, I need to see and achieve and have a black male mentor. But I also have found extreme value in a white female mentor for me because she can advocate and speak in rooms that I'm not in. Inversely, a white female mentor could benefit from having me as a mentee because she can see issues that disproportionately affect me to advocate. But now I'm thinking about this inversely, is as a black male, I need to have white mentees so that they can identify as they become leaders. What are some of the things that, Phil dealt with? I didn't know that, but my mentor told me his journey. And so when I become a leader, I need to make sure I'm aware of it, right? And so I almost think of this thing, right? You see my children, they're biracial, right? But also I got this lily white nephew, my nephew Jack, right? And, he's got a father and the same, identity father, but I have a very instrumental role in my nephew Jack's life. He's going to grow up and say, when I see inequities, you're treating people wrong, like you're treating people like my Uncle Phil wrong. And so there's an importance for me to expose my nephew to things just as much as my children. So I love that. It's almost like this circle where we need to have these relationships of all different identities that benefit both mentors and mentees because it's just good. It's good learning for everybody. And inversely, I need to have mentees that are different identities than me because it's really helped me think I never really thought about, I was so focused on, like you said, this black male inequity, But what about my white male that is first gen? You know, I'm talking all this stuff, but the issues that he's coming, he's like, Phil, I ain't got no laptop. I'm like, oh, you know, you ain't come from wealth either? No, like, you know, like there's dynamics there.
Right.
So understanding all these intersections is very important.
And also, it's the thing of, I mean, we all understand that the more and more we talk and interact, we learn from one another, right? Huge benefits from that. But even if that white male came from privilege, their uncle name is on one of the buildings at the school, right? The pressure. Did you really want to be here? Or are you only here because of your family legacy? Like, what is really your passion? Or are you just trying to fall in line because this is what the family and this is what your father, like, there are issues that rich white kids have as well that they need to talk to somebody too. And so you might not ever realize that if you don't actually expose yourself and have some conversation. At the end of the day, when we're talking about DE&I, when we're talking about inclusion, we need to have safe spaces for everyone to be open, that they can share, they can ask questions. And one of the reasons why I think that at the end of a lot of my presentations, I have more white males coming up to me saying, I never heard anybody talk about DE&I like that, is because I am very intentional about making sure that I talk with them, not at them, when we're having this conversation. And I think that in this new season going forward, once again, another reason why I say this is the most critical leadership style for the future is the conversation about DE&I and its importance is not going to go away. It is actually going to increase. And we need to have leaders that know how to bring people together, not by silencing them and ignoring the issue, but by addressing the issue and coming out on the other end more unified. That's what an intrusive leader does.
Well, this has been great. You know, we probably can go on for one, but I want to respect your time. So we're going to go to one of my last segments. It's called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first? I'll go first.
How about you go first?
All right. And it's totally random. What is one of your favorite sports to watch? And if so, who are you rooting for?
So, football. I'm a huge Chicago Bears fan. Never grew up in Chicago, but around the time that I was first started watching football, I saw Walter Payton, I saw the Fridge, I saw the Super Bowl Shuffle, 86 Bears, and I've been a Bears fan ever since.
All right, so my follow-up question, Caleb Williams, the future, how you feel?
He's the future. I mean, my opinion is, one, he has the talent. Without a doubt, he has the talent. I think he will be fine. But if you keep trying to chase a quarterback without fixing other pieces around the quarterback, you're going to always be exactly where you are, right? Where the Bears are. The issues with the Bears, in my opinion, is not Caleb Williams. It's the offensive line. Well, it was a problem with the offensive line with Justin Fields. The offensive line was a problem with Mitch Trubisky. It was a problem with Jay Cutler. The offensive line has always been a problem. We've been chasing and spending these first-round draft picks on getting quarterbacks and not fixing the offensive line. So now I think that we have the most talent at the skill positions, but we still have issues at the offensive line, and that's why we're still where we are, right? Looking at another high draft pick because we're not in the playoffs, only 4 wins, right? So we have to get the coaching right. But at the end of the day, we have to build around Caleb Williams. And if we do, I think that he has the talent to put the ball where it needs to be. And I think that we can win a Super Bowl with him.
All right, what's your question for me?
If you was going on vacation on Friday for 3 days, where would it be?
Ooh, I would have said earlier, like Cali, but the fires is crazy. So my prayers and shout outs to them. What's going on?
Definitely.
But you know, because I had friends and I always put that on my list of I'm gonna visit you. So I'm gonna say right now, joking lies, New Orleans. But technically, I want to space that out, not 3 days. Hopefully, we make it to the Super Bowl, the Commanders, and I'll go down there. I love New Orleans. It's one of my favorite cities in the U.S. But off the top of the head, would have been Cali would have been first without the fires, and then New Orleans. I just like the vibe. I love the culture. I love the music. I love the food.
Yeah,
it's just it's a place. It's a place where it's like you're talking about that inclusiveness, you know, intrusive leadership. I mean, of all melting pots that we use as a term, I don't think there's a better melting pot than New Orleans. Like Cajun, Creole, French, Black, African, you know, Spanish. Like everything is New Orleans. I even saw this documentary, like random, like Vietnamese. You know, they like Vietnamese culture. Yeah. New Orleans just has everything.
It's a human gumbo, right? Like and just like gumbo, you throw all these things in it, and it just tastes amazing. I'm a huge fan of New Orleans, huge fan of Southern California. I lived there for a number of years growing up. I'm a Lakers fan as well, so got a chance to see them play 2 seasons ago. Last season, one of the games last season. I got a chance to go out to L.A. But yes, thoughts and prayers to what's going on in L.A. I mean, it's amazing. But what's interesting, kind of like COVID, and when you think about these fires, what it really should show us is how much we are connected. You think about the people that lost houses, all different demographics, all different economic levels. Millionaires lost houses. People that were renting out 1-bedroom studios lost, right? And at the end of the day, the common thing that we have is humanity.
I was about to say that fire did not discriminate. like you know, it doesn't. You know, tragedies do not see color. Like
not at all.
That sounds bad to say. COVID did not see color. Like
right.
I think, and then you know, it's usually and we do not promote that tragedy brings out the best in humanity. But I think from your point, tragedy also does exacerbate the human experience. That tragedy does not discriminate. It will happen. And thus, tragedies give opportunities for people of all identities to come together. Because, like, I could be rich and have a mansion. You could be in your one bed. But being homeless or not having a home, we're both now in that same struggle.
Yeah.
And so that, I do think that it's kind of weird. Like, usually natural disasters and terrible sense, it can really bring out the ills, the looting and the nasty stuff. But there's also opportunities to bring out the good in humanity of, like, people taking care of each other and uplifting everybody. So it's just like thinking about that. How can we band together in the face of tragedies to show that common humanity?
Yeah. And that's, it's kind of one of those things that got me started on this journey and spreading this message is us being very intentional in connecting with people. It should not come from a loss, right? Like we say it all the time. Family. The only time that we get together should not be when we're saying goodbye to someone, right? But we get that lesson, we say it, then we go right back to normal. And then all of a sudden it's 3-4 years and we haven't seen somebody. Then all of a sudden, boom, someone's not here. And we're like, man, didn't we talk about this the last time? And so I just think that at the end of the day, what I'm passionate about is building or creating leaders that are intentional about being a positive, lasting, driving force in people. And When you do that at the job, you connect with someone at the job. You make them feel valued and supported at the job. You expose them to a different perspective that they didn't have, a different culture that they wasn't aware of. That doesn't just change at the job. That changes at home, right? That changes in the neighborhood, right? You have someone that is questioning whether they can be a mother and an employee. You can help them be a better mother. That's going to make that house a little bit better, right? You tell that father, that husband, oh, it's your wife's birthday? Get out of here, right? Go take her out. Do something, right? You can actually improve people's lives well beyond just the paycheck that you're giving them. And when you do that, like I said, it's ripple effects. It's going to make that neighborhood better, right? You got a PTA meeting, don't miss it, right? Just think about how many people are working jobs that they worry if they would be able to take off for a PTA meeting. Imagine if leaders were like, don't miss the PTA meeting, right? Once again, something pops up and you need them to work on Saturday, they're going to remember when you let them have an afternoon off so you can go have lunch, so they can have lunch with their wife. And that, once again, no problem. I got you, right? I'm there.
I love that. So that's very inspiring. So this is the part of the show called Shout Outs and Plugs. Shout out, show love to anyone you want to show love to, and then plugs. These are things that you're working on, another book, whatever. I'll make sure I put it in the show notes. So the stage is set. Shout out and plugs.
All right. Oh, man, shout out. Man, I have to shout out my wife, Marcus Canady. She is HR professional with Lockheed Martin. She is just the love of my life. She's the rock. Talking about bringing joy, just brings absolute joy to the family, to the neighborhood, to everywhere she goes. So, man, I got it. And the support that she has given me as a military wife, this journey that I'm going on right now, doing this, it cannot happen without her. So I'll definitely give a shout out for that. Plug, kind of a, hey, I got to plug this because this is a passion of mine. So I am working on edition 2 of the Intrusive Leadership book. It will be out probably this March. Matter of fact, I'm recording the audiobook right now. So hopefully my voice is coming across pleasing to you because it's going to be me reading it. But one of the things that, I brought that flyer in that I was going to tell you about is that I'm a graduate of the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. The Alumni Association of the Coast Guard Academy set up the Intrusive Leadership Fund. What this fund does is it allows me to gift books to active duty military members when I go and visit units, because I'm not doing this to sell books to military members, right? That's never been my goal. Military members want to sharpen their leadership skills. I would like to gift them the book. And the Intrusive Leadership Fund allows people to donate to the fund, and then that fund's sole purpose is to purchase books when I go and visit military units. So if there's a plug that I have to do, I have to that, because it's been awesome giving out over 1,000 books already to military members, in the first year, and obviously looking to give out a lot more.
Well, thank you so much for joining today. Positive Philter listeners, I'll put all the links to not only the fund, but the actual purchase link for the book for those that are not military supportive, buy the book. And just continue to support this. This has been a great topic, and I'm really excited for your feedback and listening. As you know, every episode is dedicated to the memory of my late father-in-law and the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund, which I put in every show note, as well as if you're a part of the Mason community, please consider submitting up Pats for Patriots to share kindness throughout the community. This is a great podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.